Hi there, my name is Moray and welcome to Moray's Muse. Today we're talking about the life of Petrarch. Petrarch is famously known for starting the Renaissance, allegedly. How is that? Well, it comes from Petrarch's discovery of a certain text that has changed my year. I don't know if that's relevant. It's Cicero's Letters to Atticus. You see, Petrarch coined the term Dark Ages, and Petrarch's relationship with Cicero was quite parasocial. I feel like from reading about it, it was the first parasocial relationship we had in history between a scholar and a former writer. So we will be discussing Petrarch's biography, but we'll also be discussing the discovery that stopped the Dark Ages and began the Renaissance. And we'll also be discussing the stereotype that Cicero was not known during Petrarch's time. It's such a stereotype, it's so silly. He was, but Letters to Atticus changed everything and changed the stereotype of this litigator who was a hard man into being quite human. Anyway, we'll discuss all of that in this video. So let's start with Petrarch's biography. Francesco Petrarch is born on July the 20th, 1304, in Tuscany. His father, Ser Petrarcho, was a notary, and his father was exiled. It was quite a contemptuous, I'm using court terms. It was quite a volatile time. Petrarch was a man without a fixed civic home. His father's troubles really affected him, and this is why Petrarch is said to have wanted to create an intellectual homeland. In 312, the family moved to France in Avignon, and Petrarch gets early insights into administrative duties and the intellectual networks of the church. Plutarch's education began under the tutelage of Convenevole da Prato, a grammarian, installed within Plutarch passion for Latin style, and Petrarch's father was insistent that his son study law. In 316, Petrarch heads over to the University of Montpellier. In 320, Petrarch moves to the University of Bologna and starts properly studying law at the Center for Legal Studies. And Petrarch during these years was really sad. There was an internal struggle within him. He thought that the pursuit of studying law was a pursuit that kind of stifled the soul, kind of like getting a 9-to-5. What a way to make a living. And this is an interesting one for me. He believed the legal system was selling justice. Petrarch's dad was very frustrated with his son's neglect of his studies, and Petrarch's dad throws his son's classic studies books, like all his books, into a fire. In 326, death of Petrarch's father liberates Petrarch. Freedom! Freedom! And Petrarch abandons his studies of law, and Petrarch returns to Avignon to pursue the study of letters. And to uphold this lifestyle, Petrarch takes a job in 1327 in the church of Santa Chiara. Petrarch falls in love. He sees a lady called Laura for the first time, and he writes her a selection of poems. Not a selection, 366 poems. Imagine simping that hard. I think it's romantic. The canzoniere. And he changes as a person. Throughout these poems, he explores completely different concepts to the concepts of his time. Medieval love was courtly love, but the poetry that Petrarch created, it was a deeply human perspective of time and the morality of beauty. And Petrarch's little poems, his collection of 366 poems, they earned him a lot of fame. Then Petrarch gets more successful. Petrarch then composes a poem, Africa, based on Scipio Africanus, the Gracchi brothers' granddad. Time is weird, man. So by this point, Petrarch has like a rising reputation as a poet and a scholar. In 1341, he's crowned Poet Laureate on Capitoline Hill. This is the revival of an ancient tradition. This tradition had been dormant for thousands of years, and Petrarch is said to have been the one to revive it or make it famous. Then Petrarch presents a manifesto for the role of the poet in civil society. Petrarch believes that poetry is essential for the cultural renewal of Italy. Now then, I want to talk about Petrarch's relationship with Marcus Tullius Cicero, because some of the greatest thinkers in history have looked to Cicero. Now let's talk about the stereotype that Petrarch is the one who revived Cicero completely. People always attribute Petrarch to finding all of Cicero's work. Instead, Petrarch found letters to Atticus. And why was him finding letters to Atticus so prevalent rather than Cicero's other work, kind of like the Philippics? Cicero was known in the medieval time as being quite logistical and stoic. Now, the reason that I personally champion Cicero quite a lot is because he's the only one in Rome who seems normal. We look at his letters to Atticus and we see these quite heartfelt letters, him complaining about laws, him being heartbroken, and him being mentally ill, what we would call it in the common day. And when you read Philippics, it paints a completely different story. You see, Petrarch saw Cicero as a human. In fact, the world got to see Cicero as being a human due to the finding of letters to Atticus. But it wasn't letters to Atticus that Petrarch first found, because that's another stereotype. In Belgium, Petrarch finds Cicero's Pro Archia Poeta, a narration defending the citizenship of a Greek poet. And Petrarch found this transformative. Petrarch found that this work of Cicero's was an impassioned defense of the liberal arts, which were lacking in the rigid medieval time. This discovery of Cicero's work came at a good time. Petrarch had abandoned his law career for the arts. In 1345, Petrarch then finds letters to Ad Atticum, and this is the turning point. It's not just a turning point for Petrarch, but it's a turning point for the history of humanism. At the Chapter Library of Verona Cathedral in 1345, Ad Atticum is there hiding and Petrarch finds it. These letters were virtually unknown. Since the 12th century, this idea of this stoic Roman statesman in the Middle Ages was broken. Many know Cicero still to this day as a stoic sage, a detached moral philosopher. But these letters show him to be anxious, prone to vanity, deeply entangled in how messy the politics of the late Roman Republic are. And this was a watershed moment. Petrarch is offended originally by the letters. That's when Petrarch writes a letter to Cicero. This discovery inaugurated a new historical consciousness. Petrarch realizes that all these figures carried through our history were real humans, real individuals with complex motivation, rather than just icons. We would call it in the modern age parasocial relationship, to be honest with you. And Petrarch saw Cicero as a friend. Following the Verona discovery, Petrarch is motivated to collect more than ever. And like Cicero, Petrarch is collating his own letters. This style of writing reinvented the letter for the modern age. It became a process that was heartfelt rather than formal and bureaucratic. So why does the idea that Petrarch created the Renaissance stand up? Well, it's because Petrarch coined the term the Dark Ages. And I think the medieval era was really dark. I never want to study it as a historian ever. They did have baths, so that was a stereotype. Petrarch wanted a time with human-centric secular ethics. I mean, the irony, man. The Renaissance is known for its era of discovery, aka colonization. And yet the Europeans were discovering parts of themselves that they didn't think existed or could culturally exist. Look at the hypocrisy of it all. You see, Petrarch, who's the first one to conceptualize history in terms of a rupture between classical antiquity and his own time, he was able to bridge the gap. He changed the way we looked at history and studied it. So Petrarch coins the term Dark Ages because the centuries in between the Middle Ages and the Roman Empire were pretty dark, according to Petrarch. The loss of classical Latin purity and the degradation of ancient knowledge, which it was a thing, represented a period of intellectual gloom. Pax Romana. Well, actually, Pax Romana is a really bad term because that's an empire term. Pax Romana, I'm talking about the Republic, so that's historically inaccurate. That's historically inaccurate, Moray. The pre-Christian times were dark. Petrarch reversed this traditionally Christian metaphor where the pre-Christian times were dark and the church was light. For Petrarch, the achievements of Greece and Rome were the true light, and the subsequent influence of barbarians, you know, the Visigoths knocking on the door, that was darkness. The Visigoths, the Franks. This was the Renaissance mindset. He delegitimized the past as a period of stagnation, kind of like Labour government. And Petrarch created a necessity for the return to sources of antiquity. Petrarch thought by restoring Latin and Greek texts, he was restoring the past and saving Western civilization. The last thing we're going to talk about Petrarch is his philological method. In the past, during Petrarch's time, scholars would read classical texts and relate them to Christian texts, Christian theology. But Petrarch wanted to know the truth, the tea, the hot piping tea. And he wanted to hear the original voice of the author, kind of like we see Cicero in Ad Atticum or Letters to Atticus. Petrarch collects works of Livy and Cicero, obviously, and he corrects scribal errors that had accumulated over centuries, like he crosses out everyone's notes. Petrarch was also the first man to realize that the Latin language has changed throughout time. And he had his own copies of Virgil with no annotations about Christianity. He wanted to really find the text at the source. You know, he really wanted to find, like, he didn't want to interpret his own. Yeah, he wanted to find the original. He didn't want to edit it or put his own spin on it due to the time he was brought up in. He wanted the original stuff. This is what Mary Beard talks about. Mary Beard talks about, not only is history fascinating to someone like me, this is why I'm so obsessed with the triumvirates or the lack of the first one, but it's interesting how our culture changes how we interpret those historical events. And that's what I find fascinating, and Petrarch was very good at not doing that. He was interpreting them at the source. So, okay, I really like you, Petrarch. Something really cool about Petrarch as well, in the Middle Ages, climbing mountains was seen as a bad pursuit, right? It was not very Christian, right? I'm gonna tell you why, okay? Because the concept of individualism, doing something for yourself to enjoy it, wasn't seen as being very Christian, right? But he climbs Mount Ventoux in Provence, right? And he does it for himself. And this ascent is cited as the symbolic birth of the Renaissance mind, because and now we have that metaphor, climbing the mountain is the climb for the pursuit of knowledge. In the medieval world, mountains were known as being dangerous and irrelevant to a soul's salvation, right? So Petrarch changed culture a lot. The transition from medieval Cicero to Renaissance Cicero, because he was interpreted because prior to Petrarch's, not only discovery, because Ad Atticum, imagine if Petrarch had not discovered Ad Atticum, right? And somebody had interpreted Atticus, Letters to Atticus with Christian values, and that's how we saw them today, rather than in their pure form. Because that shit stops me spiraling out when I get my newsletter every other morning from what day Cicero wrote it, you know, Cicero's complaining about laws or that he feels unwell or he misses his friends. I'm just like, oh, daddy, same. I wonder what Cicero would think of me. A Celtic woman, he's studying law and taking a corporate entity to court. Also being like, hey, I need to go to therapy. Cicero, you should have gone to therapy. In conclusion, Petrarch changed the way we saw history forever. It's controversial to ask whether Greek and Roman antiquity was the light of history. I don't agree with that, but what I do agree with is Petrarch seeing things for what they are. And well, we can climb mountains because of Petrarch now. So I'm gonna climb Mount Margam and think of him and thank him for that. I don't think Margam has a mountain. Is it Margam Mountain? I got really stoned up there once. So I just wanted to say thank you to all the new subscribers and commenters. And if I'm wrong about something, because I don't do this with AI. I do this late at night, studying. Write it in the comment below. So leave a comment. Thank you so much for watching this video. We have a lot of our subscribers' kind of ideas and videos to create, so thank you.